And our next speaker is Professor Maria Raciti, who I'm sure many of you know. Professor Maria Raciti is a social marketer. She's co-director of the Uni of the Sunshine Coast Indigenous and Transcultural Research Centre, and she's the co-leader of the Education and Economies theme in the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for Indigenous Futures. Maria is an Australian Aboriginal woman with cultural connections to the Kakadoon, and I hope I say this right, Thanakwith and Bulgaman peoples. She serves on several national and international committees and is regularly engaged as an expert advisor. Her research has produced impactful outcomes, including informing national policy. So I'd like to invite Professor Maria Raciti up to speak. We will also have a Q&A session at the end of Maria's presentation. So get your questions ready or your points that you'd like to raise, and we will have an interactive session at the end of this keynote address. Thank you, Maria.
Hey everybody, how you going? Pretty good, all right. So I am so thrilled to be here today and to be the first keynote. I'm going to sort of brighten it up a bit, because sometimes when we talk about things like disruption, the cycle starts happening and we start getting down. So what I'd like to do, first of all, is to acknowledge how fantastic Auntie Violet's Welcome to Country was. I'll just turn this down because it's like right in my face. How wonderful her Welcome to Country was. Now, it's really important to not only acknowledge country, but I like to these days actually celebrate country, to move it to that next level, because country supports our research, it supports us, it provides us with inspiration. Country is the more than human, okay? And country is our teacher. And I'll talk more about that later as I go along. So the theme of the conference today, as we all know, is about the role of social marketing in the age of disruption, and it is an honour to be here. And what I'd like to propose today is that rather than resist and retreat from today's disruptive VUCA world that we live in, that we actually lean into it. Indeed, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity that punctuates our everyday is actually ripe with opportunity for us as social marketers. Now, flying in yesterday from warm, wet, but evergreen Queensland, that country is experiencing autumn in a completely different way, and then to walk out of the airport to be met with that fresh, crisp stillness, as well as these wonderful autumn leaves, which is very novel, by the way, for someone who's a Queenslander, was just simply amazing. So country is our teacher, and what it reminded me of was how places like the Sunshine Coast and like Canberra, or different countries, have their own distinct rhythms, how they all experience seasons, and how seasons teach us about change. Let me hope I get this right. So change is upon us, literally outside the doors of this venue. We know, we see the autumn leaves, we see change, and sometimes change arrives quietly, like these changing leaves. It reminds us that transformation, that disruption, is both natural and necessary. It's not new, it's not something that we've engineered. It's always been there, and country is our teacher. So what do we know about autumn? We know that autumn is a season of reflection. It's also one of renewal, and it's about letting go and making ways for new beginnings. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. What do we let go of, and what do we hold on to? So we find ourselves right here in that moment on this autumn day in a disruptive environment. And with it, it's an invitation from country to consider what we carry forward and what we leave behind. So change for many people might be scary, and I think that's because of our upbringing and our view that the world is predictable and linear. But is it really? Hang on, let's just think about that for a second. Aren't we change agents? Isn't change our middle name, right? Isn't change actually, whoops, going the wrong way. Change is our happy place, people. Come on, this is what social marketing is all about. This is where we do our best work, isn't it? We skirt along the edges of transformation every day. It occupies us. It's our work. It's where we do our best. It's where we make things happen. So disruption is our song, if you like. The DJ's just put it on for us, and we're going to dance to new rhythms. It's that sweet spot for us where there's a whole range of possibilities. It's an option to let go of things that don't serve us anymore and to dance to the beat of a different drum. Now, country and the change in season reminds us that, whoops, and I really have to figure out how to go forwards. Hang on. I was just like lost the cool there. Anyway, so country around us reminds us that change is ever present, okay? It has its own cycles and patterns and rhythms, and it creates space for transformation. So within disruption, there is opportunity for us, and this is our happy place. Now, look, we've all done it. We've all recognised that the world has changed, that the fundamentals of life are different, and it's been occurring for a couple of decades even, sometimes at a more accelerated pace than at other times. Now, sometimes we just can't put our finger on it, and other times we just didn't have a name for it. Well, I'd like to give you a name. Now, you've probably heard this before. Some of you probably teach it. But the name is VUCA, and that's what I'd like to present to you today. Now, VUCA is a term that emerged from the US military in the late 1980s to characterise the rapidly changing conditions and situations following the Cold War. Today, it is widely used and relevant to all aspects of life and to all people. So let's have a closer look and unpack VUCA. Volatility. So volatility refers to the rate and magnitude of change in the world, making it difficult to predict the future. Think about it. Sudden policy shifts, economic fluctuations, and unexpected social movements. And that was all in the first 100 days of an overseas president's election. That's volatility, right? That's our life. Uncertainty. Uncertainty describes the lack of predictability and the difficulty in forecasting responses to actions or initiatives. You know, we put out those great programs for our participants. Just do A and B and C will follow. But is that still the case? Is that still happening? Maybe not in all instances. And that's that degree of uncertainty. Complexity refers to the numerous interconnected factors and variables that make it difficult to identify clear cause and effect relationships. They're entanglements. We know that low socioeconomic status is linked to education outcomes and public health. But when we look at the entanglements between them all, which button do we push first? Which lever do we pull? How do we go about this? And so these entanglements represent the complexity that we face. Now, that's a part of our work that for those PhD students in the room and practitioners, you know all too well. And lastly, ambiguity, probably my favourite, if there was a favourite amongst it all, denotes the lack of clarity in interpreting situations, resulting in multiple possible truths. What this can do is affect our programs. If we might have a community-based project, but we've got people sitting around the table who've got all different interpretations. There's vagueness, there's this lack of clarity. It affects us from co-design, the success of the program. Well, what metrics do we use? How do we know we've been successful? And are those things still fit for purpose? And of course, the evaluation of our work, which is always really important. So VUCA affects everyone in the room and everyone in the social marketing ecology, our participants, our policymakers, and all other stakeholders. So when VUCA presents, it affects all of us in different ways. Now, let me know if any of these are familiar. Who has had or seen, even amongst their participants, those feelings of, you know, I'm just getting by today, right? Yeah. Trying to keep up. Feeling overwhelmed by uncertainty. I'm looking like this is a bit of a checklist for us all here. This was the morning. This was just getting here. I know some of us are overachievers, right? All right? Overloaded and stressed, and of course, frustrated with constant change. So yes, for the overachievers in the room, that was between breakfast and 8:45 when we started. For me, that was between 8:45 and then when I got up, okay, to talk. So it's something that we're familiar with, right, guys? And of course, it's something where we often think we should be responding to volatility, uncertainty and complexity in certain ways, right? Because we put that social marketing hat on and we think, oh, you know, the heroes in the room here, right? We're going to solve all of this. We think we should be confident and adaptable. And there's a whole heap of books out there now on becoming adaptable, and adaptable is this sort of micro soft skill of the 21st century. Now, for those of us in the room with a clear line of sight to retirement, this is also an opportunity to be blissfully ignorant. Like, I just throw it up there because I know it resonates. Because on some, because VUCA can be a little bit over the top. So blissful ignorance, hey, if we just look away, hear no evil, see no evil, we'll miss it. We'll miss it, it'll pass. But look, here today in this disruptive space, as the seasons outside are teaching us to change, we're going to consider two things going forward. What we leave behind and what we take with us. So just like those autumn leaves, what falls and what stays. Now VUCA, skipped a page. Now how did VUCA come to be? Well, a little bit of a history that I threw together last night for you all, just to get that sense. Because sometimes we are reacting to the disruption around us rather than responding and getting that big picture. And that's where that eagle perspective, that bird's eye perspective over the top can calm us and show us the way forward. So the pre-VUCA world was characterised by stability, predictability, linearity and controllability. This is the world we grew up in. This is the world that's in our textbooks, in our journal articles. This is the models that we teach our students. Think about the logic model, right? Linear. Do this, then that, then this and that. And it all follows in this linear, controllable fashion. We design programs with the best intentions because the research has told us that this is predictable and it'll lead to certain outcomes. It's in the tools that we design. So we have pre-VUCA mindsets. We have pre-VUCA expectations. So in these VUCA times, they are no longer fit for purpose. So in fact, this is our opportunity for change. Now, emergence has been really probably across the last 20 years, but we'll bring it into some really early signals. And just like Nadia had identified, it's this layering of different challenges over time that has brought VUCA to us, a bit like a change of the season where it's layered and it slowly and quietly creeps up on us. So VUCA has quietly and incrementally arrived through a series of both mild, moderate and major disruptions that have signalled the shift. So some of these disruptions include the global financial crisis in 2008. It revealed the vulnerabilities of international financial markets. Geopolitical shifts that have taken us by, well, somewhat surprised, like Brexit, has changed the predictability, the linearity, the stability that we knew of the world. Technological acceleration that has outpaced legislation has meant that products like social media and generative AI have been released to the general public before the government or any other one can determine the harm that they might do. Environmental crises of significant size, such as tsunamis, bushfires and flooding, these are all part of this emergence. They are all of the things that have brought us to this point, these VUCA moments and these VUCA conditions. We've seen social movements that have changed, not just challenged, but changed social norms, like the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter, and of course terrorism and the pandemic. Today, VUCA, we see ourselves in a place that's punctuated by instability, competing truths, multiple truths, to the point where increasingly it's difficult to identify the difference between information, misinformation and disinformation, although that was clear a few years back. We live in a world of unpredictability, overwhelm, adaptation, and overwhelm. And while we all sit there and think, oh, well, we can adapt, what we will increasingly start to see is adaptation fatigue, not only by ourselves, but by our participants and our policymakers, and that is something that we will move forward into. But what if we take a different spin on it? All right, come on, we'll have some fun here. What if we look beyond our preferences and our biases, which have been shaped in those pre-VUCA times? You know, perhaps that's where the fault lies. Perhaps if we have a little bit of a thought experiment over the next 2 days and start to see VUCA as an opportunity for regeneration, inviting in new thinking, clearing out the old that doesn't work anymore. What if VUCA actually is an opportunity to crack the system open? And what if that's a good thing? Just imagine, hey? What if this moment is giving us perhaps a once-in-a-generation opportunity to evolve social marketing to something more? So here on this autumn day, what do we let go of? So is it okay if I throw a few suggestions? Yeah, is it all right? Okay, trying to get some interaction, come on. The first thing, all right, that I'd like to suggest that we move away from is problem admiration. Okay, we suffer from it, something bad. We don't always have solutions, but we certainly admire the problems that we've got out there, don't we? Come on, it's relentless. It's obsessive problem admiration tendencies that we have. We spend so much of our time, tutting about the size of the issue that we're looking at, dissecting the social conditions. We talk about them incessantly. Then we try and measure them and come up with really special metrics that will hopefully get us just what we're looking for. We get lost in the details, and then we get distracted. We go off on all these tangents and bring in this tangential information to try to make sense of what's going on. Indeed, at some points, I think we almost romanticise the difficulty of the issues that we are facing. So rather than directing our efforts at the solutions themselves. So look, sometimes we are just so captivated by the mountain that we never actually start climbing it. So can we leave this one behind? No more problem admiration. Hey? The next idea I have is, look, the hero complex. Come on, people. Social marketers, look at us riding in on our white horses to save the day with our little toolkit and post-it notes like we're something special, all right? We're going to co-design our way to this brighter future. Now, that hero complex, I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but we'll see it. It's so embodied in us tomorrow night on the dance floor. Look out for these moves, right? This is what's going to happen. You'll see a bit of this happening, right? This is us on our horses, riding in. Here we are, solving the problem, bringing it with us, okay? We'll see a few people doing this sort of move. And then suddenly the move punctuates to the superheroes. We're here to save the day. And of course the favourite, when we do this, what's this? This is us flying in with our capes behind us, our toolkit to solve the world. So this hero complex that we have, whether we want to admit it or not, look, it's there, people. But can we just do one thing? Let's lose the cape. Let's lose the superhero cape. Let's just come back down, because VUCA has no place for egos, and let's just make it happen. So if we get rid of those two big things, if those are the two autumn leaves that fall to the ground as a result of today and this conference, that I think that's a good thing. I hope so. All right. So we are at this point of change, and we're halfway there. So those are two things we can get rid of. But what do we bring in? What do we take forward with us? We've cracked the system open, or VUCA's done it for us. So what can we take forward with us to make a difference? So just like camellias, we need to change, we need to adapt, and we need to blend into this new VUCA world. And the first part is recognising that those expectations and those logics that we've brought with us from those pre-VUCA times are not always fit for purpose. Okay. So we need to find new ground. So I was thinking about this. I thought, well, what do we need? When we're trying to find new ground, one of the things we need is a North Star. We need to figure out what that is and how we're going to find it and follow it. And I've always loved this term, delicious ambiguity. And I want to extend that. I want to extend that to VUCA so that we have delicious VUCA. So here as change agents, where change is our happy place, we're now embracing VUCA as something positive. So some of you may have heard of delicious ambiguity and some not. So it comes from a poem by Gilda Radner, which reads, "I wanted a perfect ending. Now I've learned the hard way that some poems don't rhyme and some stories don't have clear beginnings, middle and end. Life is about not knowing, having to change, taking the moment and making the best of it without knowing what's going to happen next." Now, this poem reminds us that we don't always need stability, predictability, linearity, and controllability to take action. We don't need to admire the mountain before we start to climb it. okay? And we'll climb it faster if we lose the cape and drop the horse. So let's embrace delicious VUCA. So going forward, what are we taking with us? Let's actually be guided by the paths our participants carve out for themselves. So have you all seen these sorts of things where there's a pathway and then there's this sort of random track that people have made in the ground around it? Have you seen that? Have you walked on them? Yeah. So what they're telling us is something. Here's this country, they're literally etched into the ground that we walk. Now, what they're showing us is sometimes when we design these formal pathways in our social marketing programs and the way that we engage or the policy advice that we give, that we're just not following the user experience. Maybe it's time for shortcuts. Maybe VUCA's giving us permission to take a few shortcuts, to go off track, hey? What do you reckon? In the design literature, it's called desire paths. What a great name, desire lines. So what are the desire lines that your participants and your stakeholders are telling you that you're ignoring and you're still, sticking to the cement paths out there? Rather than forcing people into designs, let's consider shortcuts. Let's consider off-track solutions. Delicious ambiguity is giving us the permission to do so. Another thing I'd love to take forward is bliss points, apart from it just being so poetic. Now, bliss points is an area that is a sweet spot in the VUCA world. It's when things just click. Now, bliss points originate from the food science literature, and they describe the optimum mix of sugar, salt, and fat that makes food highly palpable, but not only highly palpable, it makes it irresistible. So how can we make behaviour change irresistible in this era of delicious VUCA? Now, in terms of what we can also take forward in social marketing, we have been learning from First Nations knowledge. Now, let's keep that journey going. It's been a very successful one to date. Let us continue to learn from First Nations peoples because this knowledge is holistic, adaptive and relational, and frankly, robust. It has stood the test of time, and it has shown us that linearity doesn't occur in nature. Rivers and streams don't flow in a straight line, do they? Trees out in the bushland don't grow in clear rows. So why are we thinking in these linear patterns when in fact the country is telling us that that's not the way forward, that we need other adaptive ways to go forward? Now, there's two things I'd like to bring forward about First Nations knowledges that I think would be helpful for us as social marketers. The first is country-centred design. So as I said at the beginning, as we heard from Auntie Violet, country is our teacher. So let's move away from this human centricity. Drop the cape. And leave the horse at the door. Let us actually start to look outside as what nature's teaching us. We see the seasons, we're used to change. We know it happens. We know sometimes it happens fast and sometimes it happens slow. Let's draw from those learnings. Let's observe the interconnectedness in and amongst nature that's out there. The seasons are experienced differently in different places, such as the Sunshine Coast down here where I'm from and also here. So it not only suggests place-based solutions, but it suggests that things like scalability really need to be reconsidered. Can we really take something from somewhere, port it to another place? Well, countries suggest that that's not the case, and I dare suggest our evaluations and success metrics prove that is not the case. We need to consider being sustainable in our work, okay? It's not over when the final report's submitted and the last follow-up's done. There's a moral obligation there, and that's what country centricity does for us too. What happens to those people that you've worked with long after you've gone? Consider the sustainability of your work, and particularly in this era, let's not keep reinventing the wheel. And let's look for different signals. So in my neck of the woods up there in Gubbi Gubbi country, a certain flowering wattle is a signal that the mullet, the fish, are running, and it's time to go fishing for those particular fish. So let's stop and draw that out. Let's apply it to social marketing. So what are the signals, other signals, that our participants are giving us that we just aren't seeing? Okay. Oops, and I will go back. I didn't click it, that's good. The next one down is thrivance. Oh, one of my favourite. Thrivance. So thrivance isn't just about well-being. It isn't just about, getting that positive behaviour change that brings about the social good. It's next level, all right? It is next level stuff, people. Thrivance is about a flourishing state of well-being. It's both nurturing and nourishing. It promotes vibrancy. How can your social marketing efforts cultivate the conditions for thrivance and for collective flourishing in ways that are irresistible to change? So one of the things we know about First Nations knowledges is that they are inherently holistic and integrated. So I've presented 4 things that I'd like to bring together, and if we apply that holistic lens to it, we can see that they're actually all linked together. After all, country-centred designs are linked country-centred design is linked to these desire lines or desire paths. They are quite literally etched in the ground that we walk past. You don't have to interpret them in other ways. And what are these desire lines? They're desire paths. They're paths to thrivance. That's that shortcut, that off-track approach. But they get us to thrivance. And what is thrivance? Well, thrivance is the ultimate bliss point. It's where well-being is irresistible in our delicious VUCA conditions. So the takeaway, hopefully, from today and from this keynote is VUCA is not something to be feared. VUCA is an opportunity, an invitation from country as well, for us to show up differently, for us to let go of some things and to consider what we carry forward. So over the next 2 days, let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep the thoughts rolling in, and look, try those moves on the dance floor and see how they go down. You might come up with one for thrivance or something a little bit cooler. But let's keep the conversation going. What are we going to let go of? What will we carry forward? And in times of doubt, see country as the teacher and ask yourself, what would country do? Thank you.